So we've been talking about baptism and this immersed journey, and we've been talking about following the ways of Christ and understanding this idea of how God, from the beginning all the way through to the time of Jesus, how God has constantly saved his people through water. And we've painted that kind of broad stroke picture there. And right now we've kind of been looking, yesterday we looked really kind of intently at the Old Testament idea of cleansing and purification, rituals and laws, and basically showing that there's a problem with humanity. That problem is this idea of holiness. And we looked at that Hebrew word kadosh, which means to be completely other, set apart and different and unlike anything else, and pure and clean. And that's everything we are not, but everything God is. And so how do these two things get brought back together? And so there's all of these purification things to say. You have to, when you approach the presence of God in the tabernacle or the temple there, when you approach it, you have to be cleansed and pure before you can enter in, because what happens if you touch something dirty? In your challenge, you saw that you put dirt all over you. The dirt touches you, you are now dirty. And so now you have to be cleansed. And that's one of the ideas of baptism that we're looking at. And now we're going to kind of go from the Old Testament, edging into the New. But before we go and just straight look at the New Testament, what we need to do is see there's some visions throughout the Old Testament that are given. There's many, but we're going to look at two today that are visions of this idea of cleansing and purification that start to say, let's look forward to the future of this. Something's going to transpire that's going to kind of radically change everything. This is where it gets good. So let's look at the first one. We're going to look at Isaiah. So Isaiah is a prophet of the Old Testament, guys. And if you look in the notes, it has all kinds of details about Isaiah's life and many other things that he has spoken. He is a pretty popular guy from the Old Testament. But he has this one specific vision in chapter 6 that we're going to look at together. So we're going to read it and kind of talk about it for a moment and see how this is showing us this idea of cleansing, the idea of we need to be purified, we need to be cleansed. And what happens here starts to look towards the future coming Messiah, in fact, and we're going to kind of break that apart. So let's look at Isaiah chapter 6 together here. Isaiah chapter 6 says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple." Now this is Isaiah speaking, and he is saying this is what he saw. This is a vision that he had. And in verse 2 it says, "Above it stood seraphim," which is a type of angel, which had, in verse 2, "Above it stood seraphims," which is a type of angel, "each one having 6 wings, and 2 that covered its face, and 2 that covered its feet, and 2 that did cause it to fly." So he's just describing this pretty radical thing that he's seeing. And in verse 3 it says, "And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The earth is filled with his glory." So let's stop right here real quick. We're already seeing what is in this vision, aside from the kind of crazy creature that he seems to be seeing. That there's a lot you could look at and talk about with that. It's not what we're focusing on here today. We're focused on the main meat. The main point of this vision is not the angels and the things. The main point of this vision is the idea of who God is and what he's going to do about this purity issue. So let's keep looking at it. But what are the angels saying? They are saying that God is what? Holy, holy, holy. Now, this isn't just a repetition, although it is obviously a repeating. It's kind of more like this. If we can think of it in the Hebrew language, this would look something more like holy, holier, and holiest. So if you can kind of put your framework, it's like when you look at something, you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And it's like, no, that is amazing. That's awesome. That's the best. Kind of think of it like this. The angels are saying one to another, holy, holy, holy. They're saying he's holy. He's the holy. He's more holy than that. No, he's the holiest. And this idea of you can't get more holy than who God is. You can't get more different, more set apart, more dedicated, more clean, more pure than who God is. That's the framework we're starting with. So remember our study from yesterday. Now let's look at verse 4. "And the post of the door moved at the voice of him who cried, and the house was filled with smoke." So we're saying the voice is so powerful that the very walls are shaking and smoke is filling the room. I mean, if you can kind of imagine yourself in this. And then this is what Isaiah says to this. Verse 5, he says, "Then said I, woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people with unclean lips. For mine eyes have now seen the King, the Lord of hosts. So let's look real quick right here at verse 5. What is he saying? His response to the presence of God, right? He's in a vision and he wakes up in the presence of God and he witnesses these angels going and they're saying, holy, holy, holy. And he hears the voice of God. Now, put yourself in Isaiah's mind in this vision, because remember, he's in the Old Testament. This is give or take 600 years after the events that we were reading in Leviticus. So you've got about 600 years from the time that we see all of those purification rituals and priests and things. So that's been going on for 600 years. So Isaiah knows the rules, if you will. He knows the purification rituals. He knows the priesthood idea. He knows all of this. And in this vision, he finds himself in the temple of God, in the very holiest place of the tabernacle, in the presence of God. So he knows, he's like, whoa. I'm not supposed to be here because I'm impure. And that's his response to the presence of God is, whoa. I'm what does he say? I love that. He says, I'm undone with this, like, whoa, I am unclean. My lips are unclean. I'm hang around with people who are unclean. Look, his view of this is not even if he was pure, but he's been around unpure things, unholy things, and to be in the very presence, I cannot be near you, God, because why? This is destructive, right? We talked about that. Think of it like the sun. The sun is beautiful and life-giving and oh so powerful and a good thing for the planet Earth, but yet if you get too close to the sun, in fact, I know for many of us, you hang out in the sun all day, you get sunburned just being in it too long. And so he knows this, he sees this, he says, I am going to be destroyed by this because I'm impure. Look at his response and his humbleness. And what happens? Verse 6. Wow, this is getting good, guys. Look at this. Verse 6. Then flew one of the seraphims, so one of the angels, and having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs off of the altar of God. Verse 7. And he laid it upon my mouth and said, Lo, this hath touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. Some of your translations may say purged. It's actually that same word that we looked at, kippur, of atonement. Now, we didn't define it very much in the video, but it was in your notes that the word atonement, or to atone for, is the word kippur, which is a whole celebration, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, or Yom Kippur. And this word in Hebrew means to be purged, to be done away with, and we looked all at that yesterday. So that's a weird thing that's happening here, guys. Again, I can't stress it enough. Remember your Bible study techniques and tools that we talked about on day one and you should have read about. The idea here, we got to pull the historical context out, because Isaiah, sometimes we read that and we just think, oh, wow. No. Put yourself in the mind of Isaiah. 600 years, his people have been practicing these ritualistic, these laws and the priesthood and all of this stuff and the purifications of what you can and cannot touch and do. Because if you touch something impure, you now are contaminated and you cannot, or you go towards the presence of God, or you will be destroyed. But what happens right here? He's in the presence of God. He says, whoa, I'm not supposed to be here. I cannot be. This is going to destroy me. And the angel comes and takes a coal, a live coal, it says. Now, I know where I live, we thoroughly enjoy doing some fire pits and hanging out and doing s'mores and what have you, and just the heat of the fire alone. But if you've ever seen a hot coal at the bottom of that, I mean, those things, if you get a real good bonfire going, those things will burn for days upon days because the coals are so hot. And so it says this angel has a coal straight from the altar of God, straight from the place of sacrifice. Now, some of us should already be, if in fact you know the story of Jesus, you should already be starting to kind of think a little bit of off the altar, the sacrifice, he takes a coal, the hot coal off of it. And what happens, guys? Look at this. What happens? Instead of, when he takes the coal and it touches Isaiah, instead of the coal now becoming impure and it transferring that, now Isaiah becomes purified. He becomes cleansed by this thing touching him. Now that is crazy, because in Isaiah's mind, that's not how it works. It works the other way around. It works that if something clean touches something dirty, it contaminates the clean thing. And now here he is in the presence of God, and straight from the altar of sacrifice, it touches him and he becomes pure by this thing touching him from the altar of God. And then the angel says this very interesting kind of peculiar thing to Isaiah. This would have been very odd. He says, your iniquity is taken from you and your sins are atoned for. By this thing touching him, it says, now that your sin is taken away, these things are satisfied and purged from you. You are now cleansed, pure, ritually, everything, right here, Isaiah. And then if you look at the next one, it says, God says, who will go for us? Who can I send? And Isaiah says, here I am, send me. And so this is a vision that is already pointing us to something radically different that is transpiring and coming in the future. And Isaiah's envisioning it and seeing in this in his vision, he's in the throne room and he's seeing this, whoa. This seems to be working in reverse of what the last 600 years. So if you can put yourself, again, I know you're like, man, Jared, you've said this a ton of times. You've got to put yourself in that mindset, at that historical background and context, that for 600 years, this is how it worked. Unclean things do not approach God, and yet he finds himself in a vision in the presence of God, and in fact now he has become pure in that. And this would be just radical to him, earth-shattering to him. And then he comes out of this vision, if you continue to read, and it is a radical idea. So let's look at one more, this same kind of a vision that is pointing us to this New Testament idea of the Messiah, of Jesus, and this idea of being brought out and being cleansed.